Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nature's Calls podcast, your home for all things Chargers football. As always, your host, Nature Erdman, that's me. Here to talk a little bit about training camp, what we've seen so far over the last couple of days. Now that we actually have padded practices, we could talk about some things we haven't seen as well. Rashawn Slater. But I mean, let's talk a little bit more about the positives, just general news that's come out. Nothing quite as exciting. I feel like we've had kind of a crazy last 10 days before these last couple. So today's episode feels a little bit boring, all things considered, but there's still a lot to break down. Considering that we're kind of starting to iron out how this roster might look like. And honestly, some of it's more confusing than it was before with some of the training camp battles that have been coming out. So the good, the bad, the ugly, mostly good in today's episode. So let's talk through it and see where things go. But like I said, as always, these are Nature's Calls, and let's talk. First thing I do want to talk about is Herbo and Phil. Obviously, Phil finally doing some type of press with the Chargers for the first time in, I think, years. I don't think he's done anything with us for years. But Justin Herbert talking about him, because I think as Chargers fans, that's something that kind of strikes us all to our core is like, why can't we get Herbert and Phil content? Like, it'd be so cool. Personality wise, like, there's not a whole lot of super grounded, down to earth guys at the quarterback position. It feels like overall, like the closest quarterback to Phil since Phil is probably Justin, maybe Kirk, but either way, like that's how it feels to me. And so I think we'd all love to see a little bit of Herbert and Phil content together in some way, shape, or form. So just seeing Herbert talk about Phillip Rivers is exactly what you think he would say about him. They talked more about him as a person and as a father, and how he watched him growing up and things like that. So I thought that was super cool. Chargers, please make something happen. Hopefully, it's not just Phil not wanting to do any media with him. Hopefully that's not the case, but it'd be super cool to see that happen. So Chargers, make it happen, please. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about what we've seen. I want to touch on a couple of points specifically on the wide receivers because that's really been the conversation of camp. A couple other little things in there, and then I really want to talk about how excited I am for not only training camp, but preseason, the extra preseason game. I don't know the last time I was excited about preseason at all. Normally, I just don't care. Like, it's just football's on. That's all that matters is that I'm watching football again. And that enough feels great. But there's so much to look at this year. So, anyway, let's get into it. So the big storyline over the last couple days, I feel like, has been KLS. Keandre Lambert Smith has been balling, absolutely balling out. And most specifically, like the body control that you just can't teach, like on that sideline toe tap, and then just some of the effort plays that he's made out there. Shit, maybe I'm not so mad about Trey playing more Z than X if KLS looks like that. We might actually have something cooking here. Like, these flashes have been absolutely legit, and I did not expect this from him early on. Like, I knew what other people liked about him. I didn't scout KLS at all. I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't scout him at all. And so to see what he's been doing at Auburn, like after we drafted him, I went back and watched film. And I had no idea we were going to get Auburn KLS or Penn State KLS. They were two very different players. Very different players. And you look at how Penn State fans felt about him. Like, they weren't fans. Like, the guy didn't necessarily have hands and other issues that they felt like he didn't come down with the ball on plays that he should have. We haven't seen anything from that side. He's pulling down balls that he probably shouldn't have. So it's training camp. A lot of my concern from this just comes at it. I think a lot of it's been with the twos, but if you're making a play on the ball, you're making a play on the ball. But so I'd love to see him a little bit more with the ones, and I'm sure we will as time goes on. Some of these highlight reel plays have been with the ones, but some of them have definitely been with the twos as well. Matt Money Smith has been kind of doing a good job tracking that stuff. I think he actually posted this morning's one for some of the catches that he had today. But yeah, I didn't know who we were going to get. And to me, like, when I see the way that he played at Penn State, he felt like a very raw prospect who had a long way to go. And then Auburn, he didn't necessarily look like that kind of at all. Much more finished product, but it was a 1 year sample size. And so it was hard to see exactly what had happened there, especially because for Penn State, like do you know what they needed this year to go on a championship title run? A boundary receiver. Like, would have been so sick with that team. But no, his size out there, the way he's composed himself on the football field, I haven't really seen any interviews or anything with him, but not shrinking in the moment, that's for damn sure. Like, those are some huge clutch plays that he's been making out there on the field. But yeah, it's definitely going to give QJ a run from his money at the X position. Let's talk about QJ. Let's do that right now. The drop he had the other day on I think it was a slant route, was brutal. Brutal coming across the middle of the field. Got so much separation. Everybody, if you listen to the crowd, was just already just ooh, 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 because he cooked his man and then just dropped it. And that's still kind of the story with QJ. So it wasn't even a go ball route. It wasn't like a deep route. Though he's been successful on those, like, he's still so wildly athletic and wildly talented, but if you can't pinch the ball, how much can I trust you in certain moments? And so, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm losing faith or losing hope, and like, I will still stand on my fucking 10 toes and tell you, like, he deserves to be in this league, but he's the other players out here are definitely being given the opportunity to outplay him, and I don't think anybody else is going to become a day one starter and take his spot. But I think by the time you get to the end of the year and into further seasons, conversation might be hard to have if KLS continues to show the way that he's been showing. Um, it's just, again, make him wide receiver 4, use it in gadget plays. Make him wide receiver 3 and use him in more creative route, but don't let him be the X. But now, obviously, my concerns are with KLS playing the way that he is. Like, who's the better X receiver? I still think Trey, but if Trey's that good at the Z position and KLS is that good at the X position, eventually someone gets moved off the field. And I hate to say it because I have been such a firm believer in him, and I know the propaganda has been heavy out there the last couple days, but game time matters to me more than anything else. Situational football matters. It does. It absolutely does. Like, people wouldn't judge players off of how they perform in the biggest moments and playoff records and everything else if it wasn't for situational football mattering. And I can't just have someone be a summer camp hero. So I'd love to see. I'm happy that there's healthy competition. So I don't want to look at this from a negative lens. Like, I'm happy that there's healthy competition, but some of these plays that KLS has made, it's a little bit more upside in that player than I think I may have originally expected. So, but yeah, so I mean, either way, those I think you're pretty locked in for going in. I still think the Chargers are going to carry 6. Personally, I think the number 5 is probably going to be Rieger, and then number 6 gets really questionable. I don't see Luke Grimm being that guy. I do think we carry 6 though, which means it's Darius Davis to me. So someone else is making the rice. It ain't Brennan Rice. It ain't Brennan Rice. I accidentally said Rice and it immediately jotted me to the drop that he had the other day. Like, come on, man. We had so much hope and promise for you. But yeah, who's going to get that 6th spot? Like, is Jalen Rieger capable, and do they want him returning kicks or punts? Is Nyheim Hines capable, and do they want him returning kicks or punts? Because if so, I don't see Darius Davis making this roster. It just depends on what they want from their depth. And I think that they're really happy with how Rieger has performed across the board. So I'd have a hard time not seeing him make the roster at this point with Mike gone and it not appearing that we're going to go out and get a free agent wide receiver. We go get a free agent wide receiver, everything can change. But anyway, I've gotten through the wide receivers. That's all I want to talk about them today. We've talked about them nonstop for days now, and honestly, for good reason. I just feel like I've beaten it to death a little bit, so I'm excited. Let's talk about a couple other guys that I wanted to touch on specifically, and then let's get into kind of the off-season training camp, preseason stuff that I'm excited about. But I am starting to get a little bit worried about Najee. Not. I'm hoping that I can trust him because the Chargers are typically, this new coaching regime is typically very truthful, but not necessarily when it comes to injuries. We know one guy who's not at camp right now is Rashawn Slater, and now all of a sudden he has an injury. Let's hope that's not an actual injury. At this point, I'd rather it be a hold in, and he's just his injuries that he has a headache from contract disputes. But with Najee, it's just the fact that nobody's seen him, and on top of that, it's the fact that one guy on Twitter, I'd have to go find him. I'm sorry that I can't shout you out right now, dude, but reported this eye injury. One dude. Came from one guy. Najee Harris blew up his eye in a firework accident. And then crickets. Every single person that I know on Chargers Twitter was looking around, digging around, seeing what we could find out. Nobody could find anything. We all shouted it out a little bit like, hey, does anybody know if this is real or not? Because there's no way, right? There's no data to back it up. I haven't heard it from anywhere else. No news reporting besides referencing this one dude's tweets. And like 5 days later, it's like, oh, Najee Harris actually blew up a firework in his face. Superficial eye injury. He'll be fine. Cool. Big deep breath of fresh air. And the Nahi Himes injury signing doesn't even worry me about any of this. It's just the fact that it's being handled so weirdly. Like we hadn't seen him. Nobody's seen him. Not even with an eye patch on. Like, what's going on? Is he gonna miss the season? Is he gonna play football again? Did he really JPP himself? He's going to try and make a comeback 3 years from now, but at a position that ages out instead of being an edge rusher? Like, what are we going to do? And so Najee, I feel like, is going to be critical to this offense. Like, I really wanted Amari Hampton to get reps with another veteran and kind of ease his way into this league. I know he's a first round pick. I know so many of you are so high on him, and I'm high on him just a lot lesser so coming out of college than a lot of you guys were, like pre-draft process, I should say, because he just came out of college. But I really want him to share the load. I don't want him to go out there and have to be an every down back kind of guy. That's not how really we constructed this roster. Our offensive line is improved, but not strong, specifically in pass protection. But from a run blocking standpoint, like we're pretty well improved. But we need to be able to wear people down to truly play Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman type of football. And if you can't do that because you also have a running back getting gassed instead of having an even 20-20 split, 15-15 split on your running back to where they can actually just have a decent amount of touches but not an excessive amount of touches and wear through that opponent and get stronger as the game goes on. Like that's what we were built to do. And I don't think we can really do that without Najee. So I'm a little bit concerned now. If it's all factually correct and some of the eye repair and surgery or anything that they've had to do isn't going a little bit according to plan, so they don't want to provide any updates because of that, like, cool, as long as he heals up and can do it. It's just being handled very mysteriously. And so I really hope that whatever the information and news may be, we find it out sooner than later. Because right now the depth doesn't look super great as an RB2. The 3-4, like those are solid RB3-4s, but as far as having a legitimate RB2 for a ground and pound physical style of offense, I don't think we have that right now. I know we don't have that right now. So if Najee doesn't come back, so fingers crossed, hope for the best. Because if you're missing an eyeball, I mean, just run them straight. Don't ask him to see too much. Or just like if it's the right eye, they just only run him to one side. Yeah, then we're good, right? It's not both eyes that are hurt. Just run him to one side. He only has to use the peripheral from one side. Team might get wise to it and put a corner way out deep. You just need to make sure you got blockers out there for him. Like, let the man run. We need him. We need him this year. A lot of whole jokes, but it all comes down to we need him this year. So, God, I hope that he's healthy. But we will hopefully find out sooner than later, because right now I don't want to put that much weight on O's shoulders. Not as a rookie, not coming out here, not with the expectations of how this team wanted to play football. So, um, last but not least, specific person I want to call out is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde himself, Triquez Bridges, because oh my God, this whole fan base was going to turn on him after a couple of days. Like, dude was just burnt toast out there. Classic Eli Apple on the field, just getting roasted every chance he could. And now all of a sudden he's getting a pick a day. Week 2 of training. Like, maybe he's better with the pads on. Maybe he just figured it out a little bit. Um, but oh man, it was rough out there for a couple of days. And now he's kind of looking like a darling. So um, I'll be honest with you. I really wanted Kobe Bryant at that last pick of the draft when he miraculously, in my mind, fell. And so try Bridges, where was a little bit of a disappointment to me. Went back and watched him, saw some special teams value. Didn't really see him as being a player who could make the active roster. In fact, there were some UDFAs that I liked more than him, which he was second to last pick in the draft. It's not a huge knock on any of those other guys, but shown some flashes. So really interesting kind of turnaround. I don't see him making the roster, but just based off of the gifts that we've seen him utilize, his physical talents and gifts in the last couple of days, he might be. I don't think he's someone that someone's going to go pick up off our practice squad. So definitely could be a possible draft and develop type of guy. With how our cornerback is constructed, it's not a whole lot of long term positioning talent there. So who knows? We might have had something there. Maybe not an instant contributor, but we might have a solid rotational depth type of guy who could grow and even end up in a better position than that. So try Bridges absolutely saving yourself in these last couple of days. So good job, bud. Cheers to you. And so now I want to talk about why I'm excited about the preseason. And I feel like I kind of dumbed that down a little bit. I'm extremely excited about the preseason. I do not know the last time that I was extremely excited about the preseason. I don't know if I've ever been this excited about the preseason. And a lot of it just speaks to Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz's roster construction ideology, it would appear. We're not top heavy. We're very deep. There's a lot of positional battles, and they've talked about this. I wish every position had a positional battle going on to try and push the lever, but honestly, most of them do to some extent. I wish the offensive line had more. We touched on that 2 days ago. I'm not going to talk about it today, but we we definitely have more to watch in these final weeks of training camp and going into the preseason with an extra preseason game. So extremely excited to see, because I'm going to run you guys through positions and really kind of look at what we could possibly be looking at and why you guys should all be super excited. And honestly, just some fun things to watch as we go into the season, because astonishingly, not only like most of the surefire starters are locked in, there is some position battle, but a lot of what we're seeing is guys at the same position fighting for certain depth or more playing time. And these are players who will see the field, even without injury, in a lot of the positions. Like, we're going to kick it off with backup quarterback. Obviously, that's not going to see a whole lot of playing time without Justin Herbert having some kind of injury, or we're blowing someone out so dramatically that it doesn't really matter who's in there, and we're just pulling him out for the safety of his own health. But it does matter. Like, who your backup quarterback matters when you have a schedule like this. If you can win 1 out of 3 games, 2 out of 4 games, if Justin Herbert does go down, even if the guy gets sick and has to miss a game, like that matters in the NFL, being able to win that one game and perform. Now, I still think it's going to be Heineke, but people have talked about it being a legit battle. It's hard to kind of necessarily see in some of the Chargers clips who's getting the most reps. I know Heineke's been getting most of the second team reps. But I mean, I can't imagine it being Trey Lance. I don't know if you guys seen some of the Trey Lance clips. Like, when I was just talking about KLS making some ridiculous plays, there was one where he made this like diving catch in front of the defender's hands on the left boundary. Just a ridiculous catch. And it was a throw from Trey Lance. I went back and watched it a couple times, because in getting excited about KLS, I look at Dean Leonard just sitting there ready to just as Jairi Alexander would say, like it was just thrown right to him. And for KLS to be able to dive and make that catch was actually incredibly impressive to see, because it was a hell of a dive. It was a hell of an extension, and to be able to get your hands on that securely and hold on to that ball was great. But anyway, we're talking about quarterbacks. I can't imagine that guy making the team. And I know that DJ Ukulele has actually been getting some serious run with the team. So I would assume at this point that it's Heineke versus DJ. I have a incredibly hard time seeing anybody besides Heineke making the 53 and being the backup quarterback. But I've seen crazier things happen. So it's definitely going to be something worth watching in the preseason. The other thing is if there is some kind of competition, we'll be able to accurately see it in the preseason games. Like Heineke, if there's not a competition coming for his job at all, like he's not going to play all that much. Like he'll play a decent amount, but if the competition's between Lance and DJ for the third spot, then that's who's going to see a whole lot of playing time. At least after the first two series or so, because Herbert's not going to play at all. If there's a legitimate camp battle between the quarterback two spot, you're going to see a lot more Heineke out on the field. So I think it's going to be telling what the Chargers think based off of what we see as we go into the preseason games. Running back. Let's just roll through offense first and then go defense. That'll be easy. So running back, Amari and Hampton. I've already touched on this pretty good. I didn't want him to be RB on one right away. I really thought he was probably going to get out touched by Najee this year. Obviously, that doesn't feel like the case anymore. Najee's going to get a little bit less time to get familiarized with the offense. Luckily, it's not a position that needs to be familiarized with the offense as much. But if we don't have Najee, I worry about Amari and having way too much workload, because who's behind him? Like, is Najee alive? Anybody seen him? Can anybody confirm or deny his livelihood? Has there been a funeral we don't know about? Enough jokes. Anyway, can Naheem Hines still play? Was he signed for anything besides being a camp battle body? Is Rocket okay? What the hell happened with Raheem Sanders? Like, he is the closest thing to a Najee replacement on this roster by a mile. Hassan Haskins is probably second closest, but like Raheem Sanders would be the guy to replace Najee with excellent opportunity if he was here right now. Like Kamani Vidal, I don't see him being a 15 touch guy. Sorry, Kamani, I like you, I do. Hassan Haskins is not inspiring tremendous amount of confidence. Like it's Kamani Vidal was horrible at pass protection, a specialty of his in college. Who's going to pass protect? Can Amarian hit pass protect at the next level? We don't know because he's a rookie. Naheem Hines pass protect? Could. See if he still can. Probably still can. It's probably a huge reason we brought him in. These are important training camp reps, and I'm really, and at a very important position for the Chargers offense and how we want to move the football. So, oof. Running back gives me a lot of concern for a position that gave me zero concern, probably negative concern a few months ago. Now look where we are. Anyway, Najee, be okay, and it's all good. Wide receiver, we've already talked about enough. Aforementioned wide receiver 2 through 4 battle is going to be insane. How do they want to play it out? Trey's going to get playing time to some extent, like he's going to. The question is does he play a rotational X receiver position with anybody else involved? Does he play a rotational Z receiver position with anybody else involved? Is QJ versus KLS, is that the battle for the X position, or do they see them being utilized in other places? Those 4 guys might rotate like crazy. Like Ladd's barely going to leave the field, let's be honest. But any of the other guys can play somewhat slot. I haven't really seen much of KLS out of the slot, so it's a huge question mark. And then obviously the last 2 spots. Like I think wide receiver 5 is Jalen Rieger. Who's wide receiver 6? Is there 6? There's no way there's 7, right? There's no way. It's got to be 6 or 5. And I would think that we carry 6 receivers, but there's no way to know for sure. And so, what do we see in the preseason for special teams? Who ends up returning punts? Who ends up returning kicks? Is that an open competition at all? Who knows? Oh, baby, I'm getting excited already. Tight end, probably the only position that has no competition. Like we know what everybody's role is going to be. Like Aronde Gadsden's going to be on the roster. Like they like him way too much to give him the opportunity to get poached off of a practice squad. There's no way he's going to be on the active roster. He's just not going to see as much playing time. Or is he? And how early is he? How much is he actually impressing people? Who knows? Conklin looks great. We know Disley's great. We all know that they have their own specific roles. I mean, Tucker Fisk, interesting. How good is he? How good is he in the run blocking game, especially if the offensive line struggles? Could see a little bit more Tucker Fisk. I wouldn't hang your hat on it. Um, Fullback, it's hilarious that we could possibly have a competition for fullback. Steve-O Klotz out here. I think it's going to be Scott Matlock. I think they like him as the extra rotational body on the defensive tackle position. But there's also so many defensive tackles that if we're purely looking at somebody from an offensive standpoint, Steve-O Klotz might be the guy. Who knows? I'm not in those practice fields. I couldn't evaluate a fullback if I tried to. I'm not even going to spend that much more time talking about it. But I know a lot of Steve-O Klotz fans. Offensive line. Round out the offense, talking about the offensive line. Actually, I don't want to talk about it. I've talked about it ad nauseum. We've all talked about it. My whole premise of last video was pretty much talking about this. Let's move along to the defense. Because defensive tackle 1 through 6 is crazy. 1 through 6. Like, okay, maybe 2 through 6. We know Tart is probably DT1. Could easily get moved down the depth chart if any of those guys behind him balls out. But I think really you're looking at 2 through 6. And I mean all the way to 6. Like who's giving you pass rush juice? If no one if our two younger guys, our two earlier draft picks from the last two drafts in Caldwell and Boygby can't see the field, like who's giving you pass rush juice from the interior? Oh god, we're gonna have none. The secondary is gonna have to hold up because if they've got decent tackles, don't let us play the Lions. Don't let us play the Eagles. Whew. There's going to be some rough matchups for trying to get pressure because there's just no way we can do it with the way that our roster is constructed. Cleo Mack is always going to win a little bit, but man, the interior defensive pressure is very concerning. Now, from a run blocking standpoint, I think we'll be very solid. If we're going to pick one, I'd rather have run blocking through the interior than pass rush through the interior because anybody can run the football right down your throats if you can't stop the run. Rushing the passer, at least there's two other positions at the two edge spots that are going to be trying to create pressure. And we do have, luckily, two very strong edge rushers. Maybe not elite at this point in their career, but maybe we'll see Thule take that next step and be elite. But regardless, that interior defensive line is concerning to me just with the way they've rotated the ones, the twos, and the threes. And I really thought we'd start seeing possible breakout candidates moving their way up and not more questions than answers at this point. So that is one that I think is going to be very heavily influenced because, I mean, you look at 2 through 6 and you can rearrange those 5 guys in literally any way possible before the end of training camp and preseason as we go into the regular season. And there is not a single combination of those positions, of those 5 guys at DT 2 through 6 that would surprise me. Like every single one would make sense. Like, oh yeah, he earned that opportunity. Like, who's gonna take that spot? Who knows? What's playing time rotation gonna be? Are these guys gonna play like 25 snaps a game each and just rotate in with fresh bodies constantly? That'd be cool. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. I don't know if Jim Harbaugh knows. It's gonna be super interesting battle to watch. Edge. Less to talk about. It's Mac and Thule. Bud's 3. I really wouldn't be more surprised if Bud was in a position to kind of get pushed down the depth chart were it not for his contract extension through the offseason. I think a lot of people are excited about Kyle Kennard, which I understand completely, and I don't disagree with it. But going back and watching some tape, he's not as much of a, I don't love him as much as a prospect as I did a couple months ago. And that's not a knock on Kyle Kennard. But Caleb Murphy, Tremont Morris Brash, these are guys that people were very excited about in the past. And I would not be surprised if that edge room gets a little bit muddier based off of what we see production wise throughout the preseason than people are kind of expecting. I know Regime ever wants to consider their pick bad, and so that's going to give them some kind of additional safety net in there, I think. But at the end of the day, they're going to field their best 53. And they're not going to carry 6 edge rushers. So like there's going to have to be some give and take. And I think that's a way more open competition than people are giving it credit for, just because he was a 4th round draft pick. Safety's a little bit weird. Safety's actually not safety's not even weird. Safety's locked in. Can RJ Mickens earn a roster spot? Is he that good? And who gets kicked out? Because we had so many injuries at safety last year that we continued to accumulate talent. And now obviously a Molden and Lohi in the back end are your best starting free safeties. Derwin comes up front. You have another guy in the free safety position. Now, who do they trust to do that? Dean Leonard's played some safety. Probably not given the depth that they have. Tony Jefferson makes a tremendous amount of sense because he's a veteran and you want that veteran in the room regardless. RJ Mickens makes a ton of sense just because he was so highly touted as a prospect and had such an odd fall into the later rounds of the draft. So I'm glad we picked him. So it's just kind of, what does that safety room look like? And is there some kind of competition there? And also, do we have to take into some consideration, like, what if Derwin goes down? Is there anybody on this roster at all? Like, nobody in the league can replace Derwin. Like, he's a very unique type of talent. They don't build safeties like him very often anymore. But who would you trust in that role? Like, can we operate the defense without Derwin? That's a better way of asking the question. Is he a linchpin and necessity to operate the defense the way that we want to? I hope not, because you always need to have some type of cost training in any business and any function in any operation. You need to have someone else that can pick up the slack. But I just have a hard time seeing it. Like, Tony Jefferson is the only one I could see, if Derwin got hurt, somewhat filling that role. That could be a battle. There's going to be a safety that makes the roster that we may not expect to, because we know who our big 3 is. So where do we go from there? And then we'll round it out talking about the corners. I don't think Try makes it. I just still haven't seen enough, but he could, solely because we need DBs. Pardon me, that was a huge yawn. But right now, with Dane Jackson hurt, obviously 99% of us considered that he was going to be a starter from day one, and we needed that contribution from him. Cam feels like he's been getting burnt quite a bit in some of these reps, which is going to be hard in 1-on-1s and 7-on-7s and things like that. It's going to be more difficult. And so I'm not going to necessarily knock him for that. But I mean, we also knew that with the injury concussion history that he had last year, that there's always a chance that something doesn't go according to plan here. So where does that shake out? I still think St. Just is a Chargers podcast. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. So never mind. Getting just cooked nonstop though. And then we've got Dean Leonard versus Jaw Taylor. Like, that's a really interesting battle. Is there a way that they both make it? How many corners do we carry? How many safeties do we carry? Because that'll determine how many corners we carry. Because to some extent, Derwin's cannibalized the corner position. Like, obviously, Heeb's going to be on the roster. Obviously, Cam Hart's going to be on the roster. Being on the roster is one thing, but what does that defensive rotation look like on the secondary side of things? Like, I am so far past evaluating this defense because it made no sense to me last year for us to even have an ounce of the success that we had. So I'm just more curious what Jesse Minter's going to do, but I trust him because there ain't no way we should have been where we were last year. So there's a lot. Like, let's look that through. Who aren't we concerned about for preseason training camp? We know what running back's kind of going to look like at the top, but we need to know how it's going to be rounded out. Wide receiver, we know the top 4, not a starting position, but someone who's going to play serious snaps. Quarterback, obviously we know who the starting quarterback is. Tight end, we know how that's going to shake out. Offensive line, I think they've told us how it's going to shake out. We're just not happy about it. And either way, someone needs to win that middle of the offensive line job in the center position. So, I mean, I've got quarterback locked in, RB1 probably locked in now, tight end locked in. You're going to have edges 3 and 4 getting defensive rotation snaps that matter. All of the defensive tackles, linebackers locked. Linebackers locked in. Yeah, linebackers pretty well locked in. You've got Perryman versus Colson. That's your battle there at that position. So Man, there is so much to see and to watch and to be excited about. And I think as Chargers fans, I don't think we've ever seen, at least not in my lifetime, not in my lifetime as an adult, really heavily following the team, knowing that we had this much depth of our roster and that we were looking at players who deserve to be starting caliber player, not starting caliber, but in the NFL level players at every single position all the way down the roster. Because I felt like for years it was top heavy in every position and then massive, massive glaring holes. And instead, there's just no weak spots. Now, is there as much top end, high end talent? Probably not. If some of these rookies continue to develop the way that they showed last year, and if this rookie class is half of what we think it might be, then now all of a sudden we are starting to look a little bit flush with top end talent. But man, extra week of preseason. Everyone's going to be watching it on the first game because it's the Hall of Fame game. We're the only ones playing. Um, Extra time to just decipher what this roster is going to be like. A little bit more time before we find out some of the injury news as far as like some of the running backs between Najee and Rocket. Like it feels like we're getting closer to the season than we are because we have that extra preseason game. We're the first ones to report to training camp. So still a lot to be positive about. A lot as a fan, just from I miss football, I miss watching football perspective to be excited about. And a lot of answers that we're going to find out in the next coming days. So, either way, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, not a whole lot of specifics to talk about today. I just wanted to talk to y'all and get excited about Chargers football. Hope you're all excited as me and go Bolts. All right. Talk to you soon.